Associate Legislative Director for Community, Economic, and Workforce Development, as well as Christopher Blair at NASA. Thank you all. And so now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Kim Keith, External Relations Specialist, who is our principal liaison between the Marshall Flight Center and the strategic industry partners. So Kim, welcome. The floor is now yours.
Good afternoon here. Thank you, Jack. My name is Kim Keith. I do work for Marshall, been working for Marshall since 2011, actually, in a couple of different jobs, but most recently as the External Relations Specialist in our Stakeholder Relations Office. So I'm thankful to be here with you guys today. I'm just going to briefly share a few statistics concerning Marshall's economic impact, just to give you an idea of the impact of the engagements that we have with both small and large businesses around the country. So you should be seeing a chart that has various dollar signs on it. As a result of NASA Marshall's partnerships with both large and small businesses, our economic impact is in the neighborhood of $8.3 billion for fiscal year 19. And that's an annual number. We support some 43,600 jobs across the nation. And that generates around $950 million in federal, state, and local tax revenue. We've currently got about $2.6 billion in procurements too across the country. In the next few days, NASA will release its first agency-wide economic impact report results, and we'd be happy to provide you a link to that information when it does become available. Essentially, though, we just want to acknowledge how counties have continued to play a huge key role, especially in our Moon to Mars effort. We will make sure that NACo will receive a link to the Artemis Partners Map as well, to show how businesses in your backyards are helping to return us to the moon and hopefully on to Mars one day. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Jack.
Thank you so much. I believe we're going to transition right to you, Christopher.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Appreciate that. Thanks, Kim. Great job. My name is Chris Blair. I work at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, and we're pleased and proud. I want to introduce Kevin Limehouse, Chief Innovation Officer of Charleston County, South Carolina, to share Charleston County's NASA success story recently.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Good morning or afternoon, as the case may be, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to get to talk to you this morning. I have a lot of success stories to tell you, so I am going to try and be quick with the time that I have. I'm going to share a screen. Can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Copy.
Good to go. Okay. Well, first let me start and tell y'all that I started this partnership. Our team started this partnership with NASA at a NACo conference where I had the good fortune to be with Jack talking about solar energy. We're at a conference and missed NASA's presentation. Our good friends at NASA put us, or NACo put us in touch with NASA, and the rest is history, so to speak. And so got a lot to tell you about. And I have to tell you that David and his team, who you're about to meet and talk to, are amazing and incredibly professional. Walked us through the process, and everything that went smoothly and great, and just grew from there. So let me tell you about what we did. So we got in touch with David and his team, and he said, hey, we'd like to come and do a business expo with you so that we can get your businesses, local businesses and organizations in touch with NASA contracts, but also contracts with what they call their prime contractors, which are large international corporations that work with NASA on a regular. And we said, great. And so we started planning for that, and we engaged the community and folks like the Visitor Bureau and the Department of Commerce and the Chamber and Economic Development and all these other organizations when you say NASA and the opportunities that come with it for economic development, of course, everyone was excited. So as the community responded, NASA responded, and they said, "Hey, listen, y'all are doing a great job putting this on. We'd like to do more for you. How about we bring retired astronaut Don Thomas down and he can tour some schools?" And some of our teammates had the great idea, well, what if we have Dr. Thomas in one spot and we bring the students to him? And so we, again, with partnerships, reached out to our school district and said, we've got this great opportunity. Can you see if students would be interested in it? And within 24 hours, we had over 1,000 students sign up, and we knew we had something big here. So we ended up doing one giant hall at a convention center on the same day as doing a business expo, and right next door in another really big hall we had a STEM expo. Dr. Thomas spoke at the STEM expo, and we had about 30 to 40 exhibitors from military schools, and then in colleges, but also local industry. And one thing that we found was the success of the Business Expo was definitely tied to the STEM experience as well, because there's such a team effort. It's local retention and recruitment, and keeping those students engaged at local businesses and getting those businesses engaged with state, local, federal, and so on opportunities. But that's not where it ended. Dr. Thomas was there for a few days, so he went around and toured a few elementary schools, and I got the privilege to go with him, and I can tell y'all that it was like walking anywhere with a rock star, and it was great, very engaging for those students. And we took him to not only schools, but to one of our colleges and also to one of our public libraries, and it was a packed house every time. With David and his team, we hosted a meeting in our public service building for NASA's prime contractors, and they gave us the opportunity to have our executive director of economic development speak with them and tell them about our region. And then one thing that I think was also very important is we had a VIP reception. So this was for NASA staff and leadership. It was for our staff and team. It was for the folks that we partnered with to work this event. It was for our sponsors, but it was also for our elected officials, and it was a great chance for everyone to break bread and get some time together. So that's what we did in 2018, and David and his team said, "Hey, we really enjoyed working with you," and I hope he wasn't pulling my leg, and he said, "We'd like to come back in next 2 years," and so we were planning for them to return in 2020, and he called us about a year out and said, "Hey, headquarters got a hold of this and wants to turn your event into a NASA regional conference." So in March of 2020, we were planning for that. COVID happened. We're moving that to virtual for 2021. But let me tell you about a few things that happened in between. I'm getting ahead of myself. I wanted to show you all a few pictures. So you saw on the last slide the actual business expo. Well, here's the other hall. On the left, top left, you say Dr. Don Thomas speaking to all of our students, and that's just a snapshot. It was a huge room, and they were just very engaged. Behind the black curtain were about 30 to 40 exhibitors, and on the top right, you can see that STEM portion. There's part of the NASA section. NASA was there with a bunch of great displays, virtual reality stuff, and parachutes, all kind of great displays. That's Twyla Snyder from Marshall in the blue shirt on the right. She was amazing, and we continue to work with her, and she's great. Down at the bottom right is one of the school visits with Dr. Thomas, and to the bottom left is a robotics competition that we did with South Carolina Space Grant that came later, and that's what I want to tell you about. So Marshall is going to tell you about all the great things that they can do for you and the economic development that'll come from it, and certainly that's the case. And you have plenty of opportunities for your businesses to grow and develop and work with NASA and beyond. But I'll tell you, one of the things that I did not expect out of this that came from it was how many amazing partnerships came from bringing everyone together and working on this project together. One of which was our South Carolina Space Grant Consortium. I believe almost every state in the union has a space grant program, and we worked with ours. They're based out of the College of Charleston, and they helped us with our 2018 events. They gave us some grant funds through NASA EBSCOR to host a small business week as it relates to tying business to NASA, to develop more with NASA's tech transfer program, which is also called Spinoff. And we also did robotics competitions for them with them for the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landings. The winning team from that got to go to Johnson Space Center, all expenses paid, and that was a team from an underserved community, most of which had never left the county, and that was a real big deal. So you bring in a lot of great connections and partnerships. We also were able to bring Dr. Don Thomas back for our 2019 summer reading program, which was a universe of stories, and he went around, and again, just like being with a rock star. And then, of course, we tried for the regional conference in 2020. COVID put us off, but we'll be back in 2021. This is the flyer for what we intended for 2020, and we were hosting this at our local community college, Trident Tech, which had a brand new aeronautics facility that was tied into Boeing, and that was going to be the STEM portion. They had a beautiful conference space that was going to be for the actual event. So again, it's just engaging all your local leaders and partners. And if that wasn't enough, what came from this is I talked about NASA's tech transfer program. From that, we had some partnerships going with South Carolina Aquarium and the College of Charleston. The long story short of this is in partnership with NASA and based on their successful centers of excellence, we've created for South Carolina what we call Core SC, which is the Center for Resilience Excellence South Carolina. And it's a consortium that works to create resilient solutions for the state, nation, and globe. And again, that's been born from the partnerships from NASA, works with NASA, and works to get people resilient solutions. And it's got 5 focus areas that came out to the acronym We Can: water, energy, connectivity, agricultural, and natural disasters, and our natural hazards. And it's been a boon for our state, and we continue to grow it. So that is, I'm sorry for the speed of my talk and trying to get through everything, but there was a lot to cover. And so many great things came from this partnership and continue to come through it. I am happy to talk to anyone about any of the things that we did. Happy to help you with it. I cannot speak highly enough about David and his team. They are amazing, and I consider them friends. They're wonderful people. And so if you have anything we can do to help you work with NASA, happy to give you some tips and tricks. If we can help you with resilience, Core SC is there to help you. There's a QR code to more information, and certainly my email address and contact information. And thanks to NACo for putting us on this path and having us here to tell this story. So thanks all, and if I could do anything, happy to answer any questions.
NASA, the opportunities for businesses all around the country to do business with NASA, a little more specifically at the location where I'm currently located, that's the Marshall Space Flight Center. But we're going to talk about how important these programs are in terms of creating opportunities not only in the areas where we reside, but all across the country. And we'll share a lot of good information, hopefully, that will be beneficial to those of you who are on board today listening to the presentation. So with that said, let's go to the first slide. And I want to start out with this first slide, and it asks really a question: why are the small business programs so important to our country as well as to our government? These programs were established back in 1953, and really they were set up to maximize the opportunities for small businesses in performing as prime contractors and subcontractors to the prime on government contracts. But if you look at the chart, a couple of things should jump out. One of the first things is the programs were set up to preserve and promote the free enterprise system, which is really what our government has been about for many, many years, or at least the economic system that we have currently in place today. Broaden the industrial base. Last census study that they did on businesses, it showed that we had almost 28 million businesses in the United States. There's a lot of companies. And it also should tell you that if we got 28 million, there's a lot of real small companies that may even be working out of their homes, but nevertheless, they're counted as businesses. Another key component of the small business program is jobs. It creates jobs. Today, more than 43% of all the workers in America work for small businesses. And to kind of look at it and bring it forward to where we're at today, from 1993 all the way up to 2013, 63% of all of the new jobs that were created in the United States were created by small businesses. Small businesses are also very important to our country when it comes to innovation and inventiveness. They are the ones who stimulate those type things. And most of the inventions that we take for granted today were created by small businesses, and they're still very much involved in inventing and being innovative in helping drive our economy and do the things that we would be looking from those small businesses to do. It also sustains and maintains economic growth, as again evidenced by the 63% of jobs that were created during that time period. So let's go on over to the next slide, and we're going to bring it a little closer to home. And we're going to talk about NACo and how the small business program fits into the things that we do. So on this first slide, I wanted to let you kind of look at it for a moment. This is our NACo map, and it shows all the locations of the other NACo centers. You'll find us in California. We're in New Mexico, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. We're in Maryland, Virginia. Our headquarters office is in Washington, D.C., and we also have an office located up in the Ohio area. Let's move on to the next slide, and let's talk a little bit about the center that I work for, the Marshall Space Flight Center. Marshall is located in Huntsville, Alabama. We are located on the Redstone Arsenal, which is an Army base. This is an Army base consisting of about 38,000 acres. We occupy as tenants about 1,850 acres of that 38,000-acre complex. We are one of the top 3 NACo centers in terms of size. Our budget in FY20, the fiscal year we're in right now, was about $3.5 billion. We have about 2,300 civil servant workers on site. We also have about 3,500 on-site contractor support personnel. So when you put all that together, a large number of people work at the Marshall Space Flight Center. We also have a satellite facility. It's located down in New Orleans, Louisiana, referred to as the Michoud Assembly Facility. And it is a major production facility where they produce space flight hardware, about an 840 acre. And on that property of the Michoud Assembly Facility is one of the largest production facilities in the world. Okay, let's move to the next slide, and let's come back into the Huntsville marketplace for just a moment. For those of you in the audience who are interested in in Marshall Space Flight Center, you're also going to want to take a look at the Huntsville marketplace. It is one of the fastest growing areas in the country, and today, if you look at the procurement activity going on in Huntsville, that would be federal government buying centers. We spend more money than every other place in the country from a federal procurement standpoint, other than one. We are the second largest. I believe Washington, D.C. would probably be first. We also have a research park, Cummins Research Park, which is the second largest research park in the United States, second only to Triangle over in Raleigh, North Carolina. Today, we have more than 40,000 people going to work on the Redstone Arsenal every day. And that's expected to increase to more than 60,000 in a couple of years. So incredible growth going on from a federal standpoint. And we also have picked up a new tenant at Marshall. The FBI has located a large number of their people onto the Redstone Arsenal, and they're up and running and getting set up to do business in the Huntsville area. If you are a small business that are looking for opportunities to do business with us, there are 2 types of procurement opportunities for small businesses. Let's go to the next slide. There are direct contracting opportunities. That's where we award direct contracts or purchase orders to you, the small company. And then the other avenue would be through our large business prime contractor subcontracting programs. These are the large companies that have subcontracting goals on their contracts. And that can also be a very lucrative market for a small business who is interested in doing business with the federal government. And to make sure that small businesses have a maximum opportunity to participate in that marketplace, if you go to the next slide, here is a breakdown of the federal small business goals that are established. You'll see the goals for the federal government on direct goals, overall 23%. You'll see the goals that we being NACo, negotiated with the Small Business Administration, who administers all of this, SBA as we refer to them. And you'll see our goals in comparison to those goals. The only goal that we have the ability to negotiate down would be on the overall small business. The rest of those goals, they're locked in place. And then on the other side, you will see those subcontracting goals. These are the federal government subcontracting goals. These are the goals that we try to strive to achieve as an agency. And the way we do that, again, is through those large business prime contract subcontracting programs. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at several aspects here. We're going to start with our direct opportunities. But before we start looking at the dollars, let's go to the next slide. And as you look at the chart here, you're going to see some set-aside options for small businesses. Okay, it's one thing for the federal government to establish goals, but they also they had to create those contract vehicles that would allow us to run those competitions in those specific areas. So as you can see, we have set aside opportunities for small businesses, or these are options for small disadvantaged businesses. We use the 8A program. We have set aside authority for woman-owned small businesses. We also have set aside authority for the service disabled vet companies, and also the Hubzone. Those historically underutilized business zones. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because I think this may be of much interest to you folks who are listening in today. So let's go to the next slide, and let's take a look at those direct opportunities and kind of see how those fall out in terms of the dollars. So what you have here, we're going to start with Marshall first. You'll see our metrics data. This goes back to the beginning of FY 2016. Now, our fiscal year, most of you probably know this, starts October 1 and runs through September 30. So from FY16 all the way up through FY19, you're going to see the metrics data. And this is what we actually spent. If you'll notice the first line, those are procurement dollars. And then if you look across, you'll see the amount of money that we gave directly to those small businesses in all of those categories, again, that we have goals. And if you spend time looking at it, you'll see the goals, you'll see our performance against those goals that we negotiate at the center level. But the one thing I wanted to really put this up that I wanted to make sure that you folks understand is our total spend has been going up. Look at that first line. As you look in FY16 and you move across all the way up to FY19, that is the highest amount in FY19 that we at Marshall have ever spent. So just a shade under $2.6 billion. And that's a lot of money. And two, if you look across those different category lines of small businesses, you can see we're kind of trending upward for the most part in all of those areas, which you would expect to do if we're spending more money. Obviously, you'd like to see that kind of translate out, if you will, to new increased opportunities for our small business community. Now let's take a deeper look at those FY19 numbers that we finished up in September of last year. So the next slide, you'll see that listed. And I talked about the total spend. Now I mentioned you'll see our spend here, 2.5, almost up to 2.6 billion, but look at the agency dollars. Now the agency numbers you see here include our numbers as well as the numbers of all the other NACo centers combined into one. $17.7 billion is what NACo put on contracts. These are procurement dollars in FY19. And as the $2.573 billion that we spent was the highest ever, the 17.7 was the highest that the agency had ever spent too. So again, these trends are going up. It's good for NACo. It's good for our programs, but you know what? It's good for business, because what this does is it translates into new opportunities for the business community all around the country. The other thing I would point out on this slide is we hit high marks in 3 of our small business categories. You'll see the small business number of 350 million. That's the highest that we have ever spent or ever put on small business contracts. It was also the highest for the women-owned. That number has been steadily growing, and also for our service disabled vet. And the one good thing about that service disabled vet, the agency goal was 3%, The government goal is 3%, and we at Marshall, we exceeded that 3%, which is a very difficult goal to exceed. And we did that. We've done that now for the last 3 consecutive fiscal years, exceeded the 3%. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Let's break it down a little bit further. This is a listing of our top 25 small business contracts at Marshall. And these are the contracts that drive those dollars that helped us to get to that 350 plus million that we saw on the previous chart in FY19. Now, I wanted to show this chart for a couple of reasons. You can read up and down the titles of those procurements, and you'll get a pretty good idea as to what kind of work's going on. So the largest requirement, though, is that one that you see at the top. It's our Marshall Engineering Technician Trade Support Services. Now, I wanted to mention that for a couple of reasons. Number one, these are SDB dollars. The only way we can guarantee we're going to get SDB dollars as a result of an award is using the 8A program. So this is one of those where we used an 8A set aside. That's an option that's available to us. Give you another one. If you look down, you'll see the Marshall Information Technology Services contract with all points. That particular procurement was competed as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business side. Set aside. So as you can see, we use different set aside mechanisms from competition to competition, and really what drives those decisions is the responses we receive in response to our request for information, sources sought announcements that are posted. We use those to dictate or determine, if you will, what type set aside option that we would use, whether it be a just straight small business or in one of those other areas. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see the continuation of that top 25. And again, these are the main contracts that drive our numbers year in and year out at Marshall. Let's go to the next slide. Now, there are other procurement opportunities in addition to these contracts, and I wanted to real quickly kind of go through a few of these. One of those is construction. We do a lot of construction work. Or should I say, a lot of construction work is performed to support our efforts, not only at the Michoud Assembly Facility, but right there on site at the Redstone Arsenal. One thing that should be noted about Redstone, it's been around for a long time, and a lot of the buildings, even the buildings that we use, were buildings that were built way back in the 40s, 50s, early 60s. In fact, the building that I work in, which is the Marshall headquarters building on site, it was built back in the early 60s. And as these buildings get older, it's much harder to maintain the buildings. From an energy standpoint, they're not very efficient. So you're seeing a lot of buildings being replaced, demolition, buildings coming down, new buildings going up. And that is something that you might want to take into consideration, especially if in the areas where you are located, there are construction companies looking to do business with us. We also have those one-time buys above the simplified acquisition threshold, which is that $250,000. And if you go above that, you're going to end up in a contract award. If you fall below that simplified acquisition threshold, it's a purchase order. So that's the differentiator between above and below. And there's a lot of opportunities for small businesses who are looking to sell off the shelf or are interested in those smaller procurement opportunities. Small Business Innovative Research Program, another great program. It's a program that's been around for quite a few years. Small businesses are a lot of the companies that we work with in and around Huntsville and around the country. They live in the SBIR program. That's what they do. It's innovative technologies. Remember in the first slide, we talked about small businesses are the driver of innovation and inventiveness. And we at NACo, we know that. And that's why we, and not only we, but also the federal government, that's why the SBIR program was set up to help drive that technology through specific contract vehicles. So SBIR, the other one is the Small Business Technology Transfer Program. Not as much money here, but it is a good program because it allows small businesses to partner up with universities to do a lot of that innovative research up front. Okay, let's go to the next slide, and let's just take a look at the dollars for FY19. Now, these would be the agency. These are not Marshall specific, but for example, look at the SBIR dollars. And that's, the SBIR program is really in 2 phases. Phase 1 is where they propose on a study, and if they do really well here, they get selected for phase 2, and that's where they try to take that technology, and we call them technology readiness level, and increase it in the phase 2, driving it toward commercialization. But in phase one, $120 million went to small businesses last year. Again, that's out of that $17.7 billion total that was spent by the agency. And then you'll see the phase two, $45 million. Looking on down, you'll see the STTRs that we talked about. That's where small businesses, again, are partnered up with universities, $20 million. And then those simplified acquisitions, again, below that 250,000 threshold, these are purchase orders. Total for the agency, more than $90 million. So there's opportunities in all of these areas for small businesses, as well as through that direct contracts, the bigger contracts as we were talking earlier. Now let's go ahead and look to FY20 real quick. And I wanted to show you some metrics data. Again, these are those direct dollars that you saw earlier. And you'll see the NASA dollars. You'll also see Marshall's dollars. This is to date through August 31 with 1 month to go. Agency's already well above $16.2 billion on their spend, driving toward that 17.7, maybe even above that this year that they spent in FY19. But look at Marshall's numbers. In FY19, we put $2.573 billion on contract. We're already above $3.1 billion in our total spend this year at Marshall. And in fact, I looked at the numbers through yesterday in September, and we're almost at $3.3 billion. So really a lot of good opportunities here. Our budget's growing, and really what's driving the numbers up this year is a new program I'll talk about in just a moment. It's called the Human Lander System. But I mentioned to you earlier about the Hubzone program, so I really wanted to take a look at that for just a moment. Let's go to the next slide, and let's talk about what that Hubzone program is. And this is a very, very important program for a number of reasons, but perhaps more so than ever today in this current environment that we're living in. Hubzone program is designed to drive those dollars into those areas around the country where you're experiencing high unemployment rates, where your average median income per family is lower than the state average, the national average. And again, this program is a very, very good program. And many of you folks that are sitting in the audience today, you may reside in a Hubzone area, one of those areas that where that unemployment rate is fairly high, or the average median income is less than that average. The areas that qualify are going to be your census tracts. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of these, but census tracts can be a Hubzone designated area. Entire counties, but they have to be counties where there is not a metropolitan statistical area. Madison County is an MSA, so we don't qualify countywide. However, there are census tracts that traverse downtown Huntsville that are Hubzone areas. And businesses who are located in there are set up to try to drive dollars into those areas where, there's some problems with the unemployment and that kind of thing. Indian reservations, and let's see the other two. I think the two most interested would be of most interest to the group today would be the census tracts and also the counties that might be Hubzone. And you can actually go to a Hubzone map at the SBA website, and you can identify all of those Hubzone areas. All you need is your zip code, put that in, and it'll tell you if that is a Hubzone area. Let's move on to the next slide, and this slide talks about the small businesses who qualify for the Hubzone program. And so in order to be considered for the Hubzone program, the small business has got to be owned and operated, 51% operated by a U.S. citizen. They're also going to have to, principal office is going to have to be located in a Hubzone. That's the principal office would be the office that houses the most number of employees. And then I think the other big thing is 35% of the employees with the company also have to reside in a Hubzone area. And that's important because really what you want to see happen here is that those people who are working for the company on those government contracts, you want them to take that money that they're being paid back into those areas and put that money back into the economy there where they live in that Hubzone area. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. We're going to shift gears. We've been talking about direct opportunities. And again, there's a lot of opportunities for the small companies, but the area I want to focus on now is our subcontracting efforts. And so subcontracting is a big part of our business too, especially at Marshall. We have a lot of very large contracts, and the contractors that have those contracts, we work very closely with these contractors to make sure that small businesses are receiving maximum opportunity to participate as subcontractors to those large companies on their contracts. So kind of like your direct dollars, here you're going to see NACo's total dollars. So what this basically is every contract that is with a large company that has a subcontracting requirement on it, whatever they subcontracted out in FY19 in those categories is going to be in these numbers here. So you'll see the agency numbers, and again, close to $3 billion going to small businesses through the subcontracting programs each year. And then at Marshall, we have 34 contracts that have subcontracting goals on those contracts. And when we put our numbers together, you'll see the results of that. So small business wise, in terms of the dollars going, it's been in that $350 to $400 million per year. We're expecting that number to go up as we move forward for the remainder of this year and into the next several fiscal years, and we'll tell you why in just a moment. But let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. And as I showed you the small contracts, here are the top 10 large business contracts at Marshall. And at the top of that list, you're going to see, starting with the Boeing contract, you're going to see Space Launch System listed several times, or SLS. The SLS program, that's the rocket that's being designed and built that's eventually going to take men back into space, to deep space. And we're really excited about that program. And if you look up and down the list, you're going to see several of those SLS contracts listed. And again, right now where we're at with these programs, we are moving into that full-scale production. And hopefully we're going to have this rocket flying in the next couple of fiscal years. Now, one of our newer programs, and you're going to see these contractors eventually end up in this top 10 list, is our Human Lander System, Human Lunar Lander System. This is that system that's going to be created that will once again carry mankind back to the surface of the moon. So if you look at this next slide, you're going to see a list of contracts, contractors and contracts that were awarded back in early spring, early to mid-spring. And we put 11 contracts in place. These were kind of those conceptual studies, if you will, that was utilized to help move us to the next phase. And so if you go to the next slide, we put a competition out and we awarded a 10-month study to 3 contractors to help guide us to the next level, which we will be entered into a competition in the very near future. That's going to put a new contract, a couple of new contracts hopefully in place, and they're going to be the ones to move forward and start designing, developing, testing, evaluating the system, eventually moving to full-scale production. And those 3 contractors that you see there are Blue Origin, Dynetics, they're a Huntsville-based company, and also SpaceX. Now, a couple of these companies you see on here are first-time contractors supporting us directly at Marshall. They've done a lot of NASA business elsewhere, but at Marshall, we've only got, here with Marshall, we've got Blue Origin, this is their first contract. You'll see SpaceX, that's their first contract. And so we're working with some new primes, but again, we want to make sure that as we work with these type companies, that we are working with them to help drive additional opportunities for small businesses to participate as subcontractors under this program. And 2, going back, talking about our upward trend in our spend, going from $2.573 billion in 19, already approaching $3.3 billion spend this year. The Human Lander System is a major reason for that. Equal amount of dollars expected to start going on these type contracts like you see on SLS. So again, that is good not only for Marshall, but it's also good for the entire country, good for NASA. And let me just real quickly, I wanted to mention one thing, talking about the SLS program. Back several years ago, we put a really nice brochure together kind of showcasing our SLS program and the prime contractors that are supporting us there, the Boeing Company, Aerojet Rocketdyne, Northrop Grumman Innovation Systems, Teledyne Brown Engineering, and so forth. And in that brochure, we asked them to list their major subcontractors that were supporting them who were small companies. And when they sent that back to us, what we came up with was a list of more than 700 small businesses that were in the supply chains of these companies. And not only that, 700 companies basically spread across 48 states. Just that one program, SLS. So you can see the far-reaching impact that these programs have, not only on NACo's programs, but also on the communities in which many of you live, driving those dollars, those opportunities back into the communities all across the country. And we're expecting a very similar thing to occur with the human lander system. So let's go to the next slide. This is our resource page. I wanted to share that with the group. So if you're looking to do business with us, you want to make sure you become familiar with some of the resources we have available. One of them is our website. And so at the website, you're going to gain a lot of good information that can be very useful to you as a business looking to do business with us. You can access not only our website here, but you can access also through our website the Office of Small Business Programs website at NACo headquarters and vice versa. We also have an acquisition planning tool. So if you were looking at a potential opportunity coming up that's going to be maybe a recompete of an existing requirement, you can track the progress of that acquisition strategy by tracking the requirement through our acquisition planning tool. And then we have our acquisition forecast tool, again, a very good tool available to everyone interested in doing business. And it basically identifies everything that we know of that's going to be coming up for competition each fiscal year. And then finally on that list, you're going to see our small business marketing guide. We certainly encourage you to download a copy of that from our website. A lot of good information in that marketing guide that will help a small company understand our marketplace, the kind of things that we buy, but more importantly, it gives you a lot of contact information, not only with our prime contractors, but internally at Marshall, people that you can talk to about potential opportunities. Moving on to the next slide is our small business specialist list. I wanted to put that up so that if you're looking to do business or interested in doing business with us, just be aware that there's opportunities at all of these other NACo centers. In fact, the services or the products that you may be offering as a small business may not be something of interest to us at Marshall, but that don't mean there's not an interest. There could be a lot of interest at some of the other NACo centers, and again, vice versa. And then the last slide is our office, our contacts, Marshall Small Business Office. And if you're interested in learning more about the opportunities at Marshall, drop us an email or give us a call and we'll set up a telecom and be more than glad to discuss your capabilities and help you identify where that market is at Marshall. And with that, that is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David, Kim, and Christopher, our representatives from NACo, for joining, and of course for Kevin joining us from Charleston County. Always great to hear those county examples of how how to paint a picture and what this could look like on the ground for a county, this partnership. And so, round of applause for all of our presenters, and thanks again for joining us. Now I want to move us to the Q&A section, have some time for question and answer. Remind folks to please submit Q&A into the chat box, or if you prefer to just raise your hand virtually on the Teams app, we can address that as well. While we wait for some questions to come in, I'm not seeing any immediately. I may pitch one to Kevin there in Charleston County. Again, great presentation and work that you guys have done, and it's been a pleasure to track your progress. Maybe if you're reviewing and take a step back to how you got started, Kevin, what are some tangible first steps that a county could take in partnering and getting started in partnering with NACo? I know you mentioned a little bit, but maybe elaborate on that. And then what are, if a county was going to do a similar Expo, looking back, what are some tips that you might give them and recommendation for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jack. I'll tell you the first step is, well, first, it's been a while since I've had the pleasure to get to hear David talk, and always enjoyed getting to have those telecoms, monthly and then weekly as we were planning. And I kind of forgot that there's a whole lot of knowledge and jargon there, right? So one of the first things that they teach you when you take FEMA training is, hey, don't use any acronyms, and then they keep using acronyms for the rest of the time. And I think that's kind of, there's a lot of stuff, obviously a lot of knowledge that they have, and that can kind of be overwhelming. And I mention that because, again, just David and his team do an amazing job of walking you through that. So that was a wonderful presentation, and I get that there's a lot to take in, but a great first step is to just talk with them and have a conversation. I'd say the next conversation is to talk with your economic development folks. In our county, in Charleston County, we had an Office of Business Opportunities which focused on small and minority businesses, and we engaged them and had them involved. And David already mentioned it, but we brought in both locally and on the state level the Small Business Administration and Small Business Development Council. So I'd say step 2 is to engage your partners, both internally and maybe they're externally, and certainly throughout the state. And the last thing I'd say is, again, listen to all the great stuff David was doing. One thing that we felt was great about the work they did was Charleston. We had a pretty banner experience. Like, we tried to go all out and do everything we could. And Charleston's kind of a mid-sized community, but one of the things David always said and stuck with us is that this is scalable. So it doesn't matter if you're a small community, a small county, a large county, or medium. David would tell stories about how they would go places with no internet. Like, it's a scalable program, and I think that no matter what, I think the message is that you can do this, and David and his team could guide you to do that. And certainly, if along the way there's something Charleston County can do to help or answer, we're at your pleasure.
Great, thank you so much, Kevin. Guess we're on the same wavelength there. My next question was going to pitch to our folks from NASA about the scalability, and just curious, as far as there was a lot of data there, and of the NASA locations across the country. Is there any sense that these are businesses in more rural communities or urban communities as far as population size? And I also found the Hubzone map very fascinating resource, and added that virtual map to the chat as well if anyone wants to take a look at that. But just curious as far as if any kind of landscape exists as businesses and communities. Are they more rural or urban or suburban, or runs the gamut? David or Christopher or others?
David, please.
Chris, I'll be glad to answer a little bit to this. It's interesting when Kevin mentioned the fact that we, at the size of the location where we would be willing to come and to share and to work with the communities involved, can be the very small as well as all the way up to the very large. I got one story that I share a lot of times with folks, and it happened at an event over in Scottsboro, Alabama, which is about 45 minutes from the Huntsville marketplace. And we had been working with our economic development group, Chamber of Commerce, and we pulled together a really neat event back, I'm going to say it was around 2005, maybe 2004. And we went over and did a business forum in their location. At that event was a machine shop located in a place called Skyline, Alabama, out in the middle of nowhere. It was Avance Machine, and we got them hooked up with a representative from West Palm, from Pratt & Whitney at the time. They're now known as Aerojet Rocketdyne. And they came together. This company was Hubzone. Aerojet Rocketdyne, Pratt Whitney at the time, they needed some Hubzone companies so that they could get them into their supply chain and help them meet their Hubzone goals. So long story short, they started that collaboration. And that company is still there today, and they're still doing business. They're building parts for the rockets, and it's been an absolutely fantastic situation for them. They've actually doubled their production size of that company, and as a result of their relationship with the Pratt Whitney folks at the time, they're now machining and fabricating parts for a number of our major aerospace companies. So the location doesn't have anything to do with it. You need the capability, and then we have to make those connections. And that's what we've been good at doing over the years through these events like over in Charleston is we like to kind of think of ourselves as a broker, if you would, in the sense that we want to bring everybody together and get everybody talking to each other. And when that happens, good things happen, not only for the communities, but especially for those small companies. And just think of it this way. NASA could not do what they do if they didn't have that supply base of small businesses, that industry base, if you will, that we could reach back to and at any time to help us do the things we do.
Great. Thank you so much, David. Not seeing any questions coming in the chat box, so I'll give it a last call for those that have tuned in for any questions to enter for our NASA officials or for Kevin from Charleston. I may ask Kevin and David or Kim to perhaps give any closing remarks while time allows here as we wait for a last call. Anything final to speak about here in the closing minutes?
Hey everyone, this is Chris Blair at NASA Marshall. We've provided the NACo team a lot of documents that everyone's going to have access to, that they're going to share either if they have already or post-event slides of David Brock's presentation so you could see exactly what he shared. One of the things that we released was the Marshall Economic Impact Report, which is the economic impact report for our agency, our center, as well as NASA's, which is coming out. And so in that, I just wanted to stress the idea, we talk a lot about what we do at Marshall and the Marshall Economic Impact Report, but David can allude to the fact that even though it's Marshall's Economic Impact Report, it doesn't affect just Alabama. The money that we involved, it goes out to states across the nation. And so David Brock, would you like just a quick minute or two closing statement on how our reach is beyond Alabama?
Oh, absolutely. And it really starts with us connecting with organizations, groups all around the country. And we've been doing these business, what we like to call them is business forums. We initiated that initiative way back in the 2003 timeframe. And we've had opportunity to go into a lot of locations, meet with a lot of the business leaders. And, you know, there's just no way that, you know, we have all that we need in our community to do the things that we do. We have to reach out all around the country, and you'd be surprised what you find when you spend some time going out and visiting with these places. And it's just another great thing that we try to do to help businesses, and it's paid a lot of good dividends for Marshall, for our programs, for our large companies, and so.
Well, David,
that'd be it.
So I wanted to tell everyone, if you look at the PDF version, it's our Marshall, it's a MSSE Economic Impact Report, and you'll go through and it's going to have slides of our impact for Alabama. We just want to really stress the evidence that it's beyond the reach of Alabama. And so our economic impact is nearly $4 billion to other states outside of Alabama and up to nearly 20,000 different kinds of jobs outside of Alabama. 20,000 jobs, 4 billion in economic impact. And so as you go through those slides, several charts and pages that'll be on there, but just the fact that it scopes out beyond just state lines, and we're really looking forward to do business with everybody across the nation, coast to coast.
Chris, let me also add to that. If you go back to that to the two slides early on in my presentation, where we listed the top 25 small business contracts, I would say at least half of those companies that are listed there are not Huntsville-based companies. They're companies located elsewhere. So you don't have to be in Huntsville to win contracts at our center. So I'd leave that as a thought.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David and Christopher. And as you said, Christopher, we will certainly send out the PDF of the presentation and all those resources. We did just get a question here as well that I'll pitch to you all, building off of the small counties and regions. The question is, for very small counties and regions, is there a baseline of resources or capacity that should be in place in order to consider eligibility and in partnering?
Well, my answer to that would be not really. You never know. A lot of times it can start out just a simple telecom with a group of the industry leaders around. So that's really a difficult answer or question to answer. But I'd say that most of the time, no matter where we've been, we've always walked away with a good positive feeling that, we did make a difference and we created interest and that kind of thing with the business in that community. So you'll never know till you get in touch with us and give us a call. We'll talk to you about what's going on in your area, and we can probably give you a fairly good sense as to what type of help we could bring forth to help stimulate interest and maybe stimulate some business growth in your communities.
Hey, and one last final thought for me is as I've met people working with NACo on the July 20th event and other events, we found that there were people who joined the call who realized that they actually have a piece of some kind of SLS, HLS, Marshall element that's in their state or in their county that they may not have been aware of. And so this is just another good opportunity to try to put people in connection with other people.
That's it.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for those closing remarks and for your presentation and comments in general. Again, Kim, Christopher, David, and Kevin, thanks so much. And want to encourage you all on the line with us to stay tuned for future virtual programming and events at NACo.org and clicking on the upcoming events tab. And again, thank you for taking the time to join us. Feel free to reach out if you have additional questions, if we weren't able to answer those on this afternoon's call. And with that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, wonderful rest of the week. Hope you all continue to be well and safe. And thanks to all you all there on the front lines for all your leadership and hard work during these times. And so with that, we can adjourn today's virtual meeting. Take care.